Hi, my name's Daryl, and here's your Jeep news for August 23rd. So in our first story, let's talk about the Jeep Cherokee. It was announced two days ago, and it's going to be for the 2026 model. So the Jeep Cherokee is finally returning after being retired in 2023. So there's a couple of things I really like about the brand new Cherokee. First of all, the exterior design, I think is just beautiful. It has the more squared off look. If you look at the front and the 7-slot grille, I think that looks really attractive. If you look at the side profile, here's what it looks like. So a lot less rounded off like the previous Cherokee was. So that's great. And also the interior design. Jeep has been doing, Stellantis has been doing a really beautiful job on vehicle interiors lately. If you look at the Dodge Daytona or the Wagoneer S, I think they're really knocking it out of the park with their interior designs. And I think they've done a great job also with the Cherokee. The only issue that I have a couple issues. I have an issue with the powertrain that they chose to go with. And I know this was, they've been designing this for a long time. So it's hard for them to make, a really strong pivot. But they did pivot away from, initially it was going to be offered as a battery electric vehicle because this is built on the STLA large platform. And so I guess I applaud them for that. So they're going to go with an internal combustion engine with a hybrid powertrain. But it's going to be based on kind of a puny 1.6 liter turbo 4-cylinder engine. And it's mated with two motor planetary hybrid system. But a couple of things about it, if you look at the horsepower it makes, it only makes 210 horsepower and 230 pound-feet of torque, and the 0 to 60 is 8 seconds. That falls quite a bit behind the previous horsepower of the 2-liter turbo engine that was in the Cherokee previously. Also, the tow rating for this falls behind the previous Jeep Cherokee, so this one can tow a max of 3,500 pounds, whereas the previous Cherokee could tow 4,000 pounds. But if you look at how it compares to its competition, it's pretty similar in regards to horsepower and torque. Both the RAV4 and the Hyundai Tucson Hybrid do have more horsepower. The 2026 RAV4 is actually going to have more. It's going to be about 230 horsepower, but it falls a little bit more behind in regards to 0 to 60 time. So it's 8 seconds compared to kind of low 7 seconds on some of the other vehicles that it competes against. And so I think a lot of that is based on the size of the vehicle. So it's based on the STLA large platform, and it kind of sits in between a compact SUV like these and the mid-size SUVs like the Jeep Grand Cherokee. So it is kind of like right in the middle. So is it too small, too large, or just right? I'm not sure. But certainly, it doesn't have a whole lot of horsepower. The other thing I don't like about it is they're using an eCVT, and I'm not a super fan of CVTs. The Tucson Hybrid as well as the Kia Sportage, they use that same 1.6 liter, but they have a standard automatic transmission as opposed to the CVT. I think that's where the Jeep Cherokee is actually getting a little bit more gas mileage. So if you look at the city mileage of the Jeep Cherokee, that's 42 miles per gallon. But, because of the more squared off exterior of the Jeep Cherokee, it's not all that aerodynamic, and so it really suffers on the highway, only getting 33 miles per gallon, which sits way behind the RAV4 Hybrid. So it doesn't compete with the RAV4 Hybrid in regards to really gas mileage as well as horsepower and how quick it is. So you would hope that there would be, they would compete a little bit better on price, but that isn't the case as well. And so if you look at the price of the Jeep Cherokee, it's around $37,000, whereas the current 2025 RAV4 Hybrid sits at $34,050. Now, 2026, that actually might go down a little bit because, they're only creating RAV4 hybrids and plug-in hybrids. And so because of the economies of scale, this price actually might go down. So, like I said, I think there's a lot to like about the exterior and interior design of the Jeep Cherokee, but I'm a little bit worried about the pricing as well as the powertrain. The other issue is where it's manufactured. So the engine is going to be manufactured in the United States, but the Cherokee is going to be assembled in Mexico. And so they're going to have to deal with tariffs, and the price of the vehicle is already pretty high. So I'd be worried about the price going even higher, which I don't think will fare well for the Jeep Cherokee. So in my next news story, let's talk about the Jeep Gladiator. Stellantis put out a news announcement about pricing the MSRP being reduced for 2026 in Canada. So it's going to be starting under 50,000 MSRP, and the Canadian MSRP is reduced up to $11,400 on specific trims. So let's go ahead and look at that pricing. So I put together this little sheet here. So it shows the current pricing of the Gladiator in Canada and the new pricing. Now, if you notice, this particular price already includes $9,478 in discount. So in Canada, when you go to the Jeep website, they automatically apply any sort of incentives or discounts. That's what you see right at the top of the page. So even with those discounts in place, that's going to be almost $3,700 cheaper, the MSRP. So the previous MSRP was probably around $62,000 or $63,000. So yeah, a lot cheaper. So with discounts, it's still going to be cheaper, $54,000, and it's got $10,000 in discounts. This one is about the same price with the $11,000 in discounts, the Rubicon. And here's the other pricing. So I'm hoping this is a precursor for what's going to happen in the United States. I already did a news story like a week and a half ago about the Jeep Wrangler and MSRP dropping for that in certain trims. So hopefully we'll get some similar MSRP drops on the Jeep Gladiator. So on my next story, let's talk about Stellantis pulling back on EV and 4xe production. So here's a story by Detroit News just a couple of days ago, and it talks about Stellantis pulling back on EVs and hybrids as the $7,500 tax credit nears end. So if you don't know, the tax credit for EVs and plug-in hybrids of $7,500, or sometimes a little bit less, is going to be ending on September 30th. And if you look at Jeep's website, and so here they're showing the new Jeep Cherokee, and if you scroll down, pretty much all manufacturers are doing this, talking about the $7,500 incentive going away. So yeah, all auto manufacturers are warning consumers that it's going away. So now is the time to buy. So there's really good deals on leases of EVs or plug-in hybrids, as well as some of those options have, even without lease deals, you can purchase it and get a $7,500 tax credit on your taxes. But this article does talk about Stellantis either pausing or severely restricting production of the EV models as well as the plug-in hybrids. And so, you know, the Wagoneer S, the Dodge Daytona EV, you know, I think those vehicles are probably pretty close to stopping manufacturing just because they haven't done very well. They've had a lot of problems with them and consumers aren't really interested in those vehicles. I'm kind of surprised about the plug-in hybrids and the 4xe. You know, that Jeep Wrangler 4xe as well as the Jeep Grand Cherokee 4xe have done really well. But the problem is I think the cost of manufacturing those, are significantly higher than the regular vehicles. You know, they've had a lot of problems with the batteries and having to replace the batteries, so it might be just a decision that Stellantis is making to slow down production of those vehicles and focus on other things that make just a little bit more money. You know, I was really interested in a couple of vehicles. I was really interested in the Gladiator 4xe, as well as the Ram Charger. So there was this article that was done by The Drive, and it's like, where is the Jeep Gladiator 4xe? It's missing in action. So they asked Jeep straight up. They were like, after the dust settled, we reached out to Jeep to ask what the deal was with the 4xe. And they said nothing to share on the Gladiator 4xe at the moment. So it could be that the Gladiator 4xe, it might not even see the light of day, which is, I think that's kind of a shame, because I think plug-in hybrids really are a really nice step between the internal combustion engine, maybe to the hybrid, and then the plug-in hybrid as opposed to going to a full EV. Lots of benefits of a plug-in hybrid. I have a RAV4 Prime and I absolutely love it. But Stellantis has had their problems with the batteries, and so they might be stepping out of that game temporarily. So on my next story, let's talk about the Dodge Durango. So the Dodge Durango is no longer getting a V6. And so it's kind of what I talked about with the Jeep Cherokee. So the Jeep Cherokee gets this 1.6 liter hybridized engine, whereas the Dodge Durango, it's not even getting V6s anymore. The only thing that you can get in a Dodge Durango is a HEMI V8. So it starts off with a 5.7 liter V8, making 395 horsepower. The next one is the RT, which comes with a 392 HEMI, and that's going to make 475 horsepower and 470 pound-feet of torque. Now, the price of the 5.7 will be $42,495, and the price of the RT is going to be under $50,000. And the next step up is the SRT Hellcat. So that's the Dodge Durango SRT Hellcat, and it's going to make a staggering 710 horsepower and 645 pound-feet of torque with a 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds, and it's going to start at $79,995. So, this gets me thinking, if that V6 Pentastar, if that's going away, are they still going to put that V6 Pentastar in the Wrangler and the Gladiator? I've been really wanting the Gladiator to come with a 5.7 liter V8. I did a story talking about it getting the 392, the 6.4 liter HEMI, but I'd really like to see the base engine of that Gladiator be a 5.7 liter. Make basically the same engine options available that are currently for the Durango, and then make that the same thing for the Jeep Gladiator. And I think that would be really great. Maybe for the Wrangler, start off with the 2 liter turbocharged engine. I think that's a really nice power plant. And then also maybe have a 5.7 liter available, as the 2 base engines that you can choose from. And then go up from there to the 392, as well as the supercharged Hellcat. I think that would be really, really awesome. And in my last story, let's talk about some recalls. So the Jeep Wrangler, the 2024 and 2025 years, there's going to be over 78,000 Jeep Wranglers recalled. And it's basically for some sort of an antenna issue. So the remote start antenna cable may get pinched. Somehow that causes some sort of an issue with the TPMS warning light actually not going off. That's kind of a weird deal. So anyway, owners are going to be starting to get notified on September 2nd. So if you own a 2024, 2025, you might want to call your Jeep dealer and get that taken care of before the notice gets done, before everybody else has to go in and get it done. So this is Daryl with your Jeep News, and hope to see you in the next one again very soon.